The observer vessel exploded in a blinding flash of light. For a moment, the night sky above Moscow looked like day, as fragments of the alien ship scattered across the upper atmosphere, burning like artificial meteors. On the ground, Russian military personnel cheered wildly, embracing each other in a rare display of emotion. 7,000 miles away, President Trump watched the live feed in stunned silence. The Situation Room was packed with his top military and intelligence advisors, all equally speechless. "They actually did it," Secretary of Defense Wilson finally said. "The Russians actually shot down an observer ship." "How?" General Mitchell demanded. "We've analyzed their defensive capabilities for months. Nothing in our arsenal could penetrate their shields." A CIA analyst stepped forward. "Preliminary intelligence suggests they used a previously unknown weapon, Mr. President. Something they've been developing in secret since the integration began." Trump leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen as Russian anti-aircraft batteries continued firing into the sky, illuminating Moscow's skyline with streaks of light. "Get me President Petrov on the secure line, now." Day 162 of the integration. Less than 200 days remaining until full completion. Until this moment, humanity's resistance had been limited to small-scale experiments, isolated system protections, and Richard's covert extraction of observer knowledge. No one had dared a direct attack, until now. As his staff scrambled to establish communication with the Kremlin, Trump watched 16 other observer vessels worldwide shift position. Their synchronized movement was unmistakable. They were converging toward Moscow. "This changes everything," Trump murmured. The call connected, revealing President Petrov on screen. The Russian leader's face was a mixture of triumph and barely concealed anxiety. "President Trump," he greeted, "I assume you're watching our little demonstration." "What have you done, Petrov?" Trump demanded. "We had an international agreement, research, understand, prepare, but no direct confrontation until we were ready." Petrov's smile tightened. "While the rest of you have been talking, Russia has been acting. We've spent months developing a weapon based on the alien technology. Today we proved it works. You've provoked them. Look at your screen. All observer vessels are moving toward Moscow. You've endangered your entire country." "Do not worry about Russia," Petrov replied confidently. "Our scientists have discovered something important about these observers. They are not as invulnerable as they want us to believe. The weapon that destroyed the vessel is already being replicated in our facilities across the country." Before Trump could respond, his attention was drawn to another screen. The observer vessels approaching Moscow had stopped their advance. They now hovered in a perfect circle around the city, maintaining an equal distance from each other, but taking no further action. "Mr. President," Dr. Richards called from across the room. She had been sitting silently, eyes closed, connected to the observer knowledge base. "Something is happening." Richards had changed dramatically in the months since becoming the neural liaison. Her moments of clarity had become more frequent and prolonged, allowing Trump's secret research team to extract significant information about observer technology and intentions. The connections in her mind had become physically visible, faint, blue lines that occasionally appeared beneath her skin, tracing neural pathways enhanced by alien knowledge. "They're communicating," she continued, eyes still closed. "All observers everywhere. This is unprecedented. They've never faced direct resistance of this magnitude." "What are they saying?" Trump demanded. "Not saying, deciding." Richards's eyes snapped open. "They're initiating Protocol 17. What the hell is Protocol 17? Richards' expression was grave. "Accelerated integration. They're abandoning the gradual approach. In response to the attack, they're going to complete the integration immediately." As if confirming her words, every screen in the Situation Room flickered and changed to display the same message. "Integration timeline updated. Complete integration will commence in 12 hours. "Damn it, Petrov!" Trump slammed his fist on the table. "You've forced their hand." On screen, the Russian president's expression had changed from triumph to concern as he presumably received the same notification. "This was not anticipated. Our scientists believed we would have more time to deploy our weapons across—" The connection abruptly terminated. Simultaneously, reports poured in from around the world. All communication with Russia had been cut off. Satellite imagery showed observer vessels descending to low altitude over every major Russian city. "They're isolating Russia first," Dr. Richards explained, her voice distant. "Targeted, accelerated integration of the aggressor nation. The rest, if the world, will follow." Trump turned to his defense secretary. "The weapon the Russians used, do we have any idea how it works?" "Only speculation based on what we observed. It appeared to create some kind of resonance disruption that interfered with the observer vessel's energy field. If the Russians developed it from the observer technology itself, it's possible they found a vulnerability, a frequency or pattern that destabilizes their systems." Trump nodded, mind racing. "Richards, in all the observer knowledge you've accessed, have you found anything similar? Any weakness in their technology?" Richards hesitated. "There are frequencies that disrupt integration patterns, energy configurations that create instabilities in their systems. I've shared some of this with your research team. Why haven't we developed weapons based on this information?" "Because the knowledge came with understanding of consequences," Richards replied. "Observer systems are integrated with Earth systems now. Attacking one damages the other. The Russians may not realize it yet, but their attack will have severe repercussions for their own technological infrastructure." As if confirming her warning, new reports appeared on the screens. Across Russia, power grids were failing. Communication networks collapsed. Transportation systems shut down. In minutes, the entire nation had been plunged into a technological dark age. "They're being made an example," Richard said quietly. Trump turned to his team, eyes blazing with determination. "I need options, not next week, not tomorrow, now. The Russians acted rashly, but they've shown us something important. The observers are vulnerable. We need to find a way to use that knowledge without triggering the same response." He pointed at the countdown on the main screen. "We have 12 hours before accelerated integration begins worldwide. I want every piece of information we've gathered, on observer technology analyzed. Every prototype, every theory. There has to be a way to regain control without destroying our own infrastructure." The room erupted into activity. Military officers coordinated with scientists, intelligence analysts compiled data. Communication specialists established emergency connections with allied nations. Trump pulled Richards aside. "Your secret research team. What's the most promising lead they've found?" In the months since Richards had revealed her moments of clarity, Trump had established a Black Ops scientific group working from a secured facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Isolated from integrated systems, they worked with information Richards provided during her lucid periods. "Project Looking Glass," Richards replied, "using observer principles to create a localized anti-integration field. It doesn't attack their vessels directly, but it prevents integration within its radius. The prototype has been successful in laboratory tests. How large an area can it protect? Currently, a few hundred meters. With proper power and deployment, perhaps a small city." Trump nodded thoughtfully. "Not enough to protect the country, but enough for a strategic installation. Enough to maintain some independent control." He turned back to the main screens, where footage showed observer vessels descending over major cities worldwide. No longer maintaining their previous high altitude, they now hovered just 1,000 feet above urban centers, emanating pulses of blue light that spread outward like ripples in a pond. "Where are we on evacuation?" Trump asked his chief of staff. "The designated personnel are being transported to Mount Weather and the other secure facilities as we speak, Mr. President. We should have key government and military leadership in protected locations within the hour." Trump nodded. In the 5 months since integration began, the administration had developed extensive contingency plans. Critical personnel, essential knowledge, and strategic resources had been identified for preservation in the event of accelerated integration. "And the civilian advisories?" "Going out now, sir, but given the 12-hour time frame, large-scale evacuation of urban centers is impossible. Trump knew this, of course. Billions would remain in cities when the accelerated integration began. They would be the first, affected by whatever the observers planned." "What about our missile defense systems?" he asked General Mitchell. Could we replicate what the Russians did? Target multiple observer vessels simultaneously? The general shook his head. Not in 12 hours, sir. We'd need weeks to analyze the Russian weapon and develop our own version. And as Dr. Richards pointed out, the consequences to our own infrastructure would be severe. Trump paced the room, mind working furiously. Throughout his life, he had faced challenging negotiations, difficult deals, seemingly impossible situations. But nothing compared to this. Alien technology beyond human understanding, a countdown to potential loss of human autonomy, and limited options for resistance. What about the collective? He asked suddenly, turning to Richards. You said the observers are preparing us for potential conflict with them. How does accelerated integration affect that situation? Richards closed her eyes, accessing the alien in knowledge. Accelerated integration is less comprehensive than the gradual approach. It prioritizes core systems over peripheral ones. Earth would be less prepared for collective contact under these conditions. So, the observers are actually increasing our vulnerability to this other alien threat because of Russia's action. Yes, they're prioritizing control over optimal preparation. Trump's eyes narrowed. This was the leverage he needed. Get me direct communication with the observer representatives. Within minutes, the now familiar silver face of an observer appeared on the main screen. Its expression remained impassive as always. Donald Trump, the synthesized voice acknowledged. Communication at this juncture is inefficient. Integration proceeds as necessary. I want to discuss Protocol 17, Trump stated firmly. Accelerated. Integration puts Earth at risk from the collective. Your own data confirms this. The observer's eyes flickered, a sign of internal communication Trump had learned to recognize. The risk calculation has been adjusted. Resistance indicates insufficient compatibility with standard integration. Accelerated protocol is now optimal. One nation's action doesn't represent Earth's position, Trump countered. Russia acted alone against international agreement. The rest of humanity remains committed to the original integration timeline. Commitment is irrelevant. Capability is demonstrated. If one human nation developed resistance technology, others will follow. Accelerated integration prevents further disruption. Trump leaned forward. What if I could guarantee no further attacks? What if we helped you contain the Russian technology? The observer's expression remained unchanged, but there was a slight pause before it responded. Elaborate. We've identified the basic principles of their weapon. Trump lied smoothly. My intelligence agencies believe it creates a resonance. Disruption targeting your vessel's energy fields. With international cooperation, we could locate and neutralize all such weapons before they're deployed. Another pause. The observer's eyes flickered rapidly. Verification required. Transmit technical specifications of the Russian weapon. I'll do better than that, Trump countered. I'll provide access to our analysis and help you secure any remaining weapons, in exchange for returning to the original integration timeline. The observer's face disappeared from the screen, replaced by a geometric pattern that shifted and pulsed. Richards explained quietly, They're conducting a full consensus decision. All observer consciousness is evaluating your proposal. For nearly 10 minutes, the pattern continued to shift. The room remained tense, all eyes fixed on the display. Finally, the observer face reappeared. Proposal conditionally accepted. Return to standard integration timeline possible with modified parameters. Human government must facilitate immediate access to Russian weapon technology. Additionally, integration oversight committees must be established in all major nations to prevent further development of resistance technology. Trump smiled. It wasn't a victory, not even close, but it was a successful negotiation that bought humanity precious time. Agreed. We'll establish the committees immediately and coordinate international efforts to secure the Russian technology. After the communication ended, Trump turned to his team. I want 2 parallel tracks. Publicly, we establish these oversight committees and appear to cooperate fully. Meanwhile, accelerate Project Looking Glass and every other promising technology our secret research has developed. The observers just revealed something important. They can be rattled. Sir, Richards interjected, they'll be watching carefully now. Any detection of continued resistance research will trigger immediate acceleration again. Then we'll be more careful, Trump replied simply. The Russians made a bold move, but executed it poorly. We'll learn from their mistake. He turned to his national security advisor. What's the latest from Moscow? Still dark, Mr. President, but we're getting fragmented reports of strange phenomena in areas where the observer vessels are positioned. Witnesses describe buildings changing shape, materials transforming, people walking into blue light and not returning. Accelerated integration in action, Richards commented. The process is much more invasive and visible than the gradual approach. Trump nodded grimly. That's why we need to prevent it here, make sure the evacuation of key personnel continues, and get me a secure line to Beijing. If we're going to contain the Russian situation, we'll need Chinese cooperation. As his team dispersed to carry out their assignments, Trump remained at the window, watching the observer vessel hovering above Washington. It remained at its established altitude for now, a sign that the negotiation had indeed delayed the accelerated integration for the United States. Dr. Richards, he called, walk with me. They moved through corridors of the White House, heading toward the underground bunker that had been established as a secure command center, free from potential observer monitoring. The looking glass technology, Trump said, once they were alone, in the elevator. Could it be weaponized? Modified to not just block integration but actively reverse it? Richards hesitated. Theoretically, yes, the research team has discussed this possibility, but offensive application would require tremendous power and precise calibration. More importantly, it would be detected instantly by the observers. What if we built it in sections? Components that appear harmless individually but could be rapidly assembled when needed. Possible, but extremely risky. If the observers detected the plan. Sometimes the biggest risks bring the biggest rewards, Trump replied. That's been true in business, in politics, and now in dealing with alien integration. The elevator reached the secure bunker level, opening to reveal a hive of activity. Military personnel monitored global situations. Scientists worked at specialized equipment isolated from outside networks. Intelligence analysts compiled reports from around the world. Sir, called the bunker's commanding officer, we're receiving unexpected communication from Beijing. President Xi is requesting an immediate confidential video conference. Trump nodded. Put him through to my private office. On the secure screen, President Xi appeared, his expression grave. President Trump, I assume you're aware of the situation in Russia? I am. My administration has negotiated a temporary return to the standard integration timeline for the rest of the world. We're establishing oversight committees to prevent further development of resistance technology. Chai nodded. China will participate in these committees, of course. However, there is something you should know. Our intelligence services have been monitoring Russian scientific development closely. We believe we've identified the principles behind their weapon. Trump's interest sharpened immediately. Go on. The Russians discovered that observer technology operates on quantum resonance patterns. Their weapon created a disruptive counter-resonance that collapsed the vessel's energy fields. However, what they failed to account for was the integrated nature of their own systems. Yes, we've seen the consequences in their infrastructure collapse. She leaned closer to the camera. What if there was a way to create this counter-resonance without damaging our own systems? A selective disruption. Trump glanced at Richards, who stood just out of the camera's view. She gave a slight nod, confirming the theoretical possibility. My scientists believe this is possible, she continued. We have been developing our own resistance technology, different from the Russian approach, but based on similar principles. Why are you telling me this? Trump asked directly. Sharing such information puts your own research at risk. Xi's expression remained carefully neutral. Because the accelerated integration in Russia has shown us what awaits if we fail. China prefers cooperation when facing existential threats. We propose a joint research initiative conducted with absolute secrecy. Trump considered the offer carefully. China had resources and scientific capability that could significantly accelerate America's own resistance efforts. But trusting another Nation with such sensitive research carried obvious risks. How do I know this isn't a trap? The observers could be using you to identify our resistance capabilities. You don't, she acknowledged. Just as I have no guarantee this conversation isn't being monitored by your intelligence services to locate our research facilities. But sometimes, Mr. President, even rivals must trust each other when facing a common enemy. It was the kind of geopolitical gamble that would have been unthinkable before the observer arrival. America and China cooperating on secret technology to resist alien integration. The political risks alone would have been career-ending in normal times. But these weren't normal times. I'll agree to limited research collaboration, Trump decided. Our teams will establish secure protocols for information exchange. No physical meetings, no direct access to facilities. She nodded. Acceptable terms. My scientific advisor will contact your designated representative with initial technical specifications. After the call ended, Trump turned to Richards. Can the observers monitor these communications? Not directly, not in this bunker, but they'll notice patterns, resources being allocated, personnel movements, power usage. We'll need extensive countermeasures to mask the collaboration. Trump nodded. Make it happen. And double security on Project Looking Glass. If Chinese research can help accelerate it, I want a full-scale prototype within 30 days. Over the next week, the situation in Russia provided a chilling preview of accelerated integration. Satellite imagery showed Moscow physically transforming, buildings restructuring, streets reconfiguring, infrastructure evolving into unrecognizable patterns. The few communications that escaped the information blackout described people changing too. Behavioral alterations, physical modifications, cognitive shifts. The rest of the world watched in horror, even as observer vessels maintained their positions above other major cities, a constant reminder of what awaited any nation that followed Russia's example. Publicly, the Trump administration cooperated fully with observer directives. Integration oversight committees were established. International agreements were formalized to prevent development of resistance technology. Regular updates were provided to observer representatives about efforts to locate and contain Russian weapon specifications. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Project Looking Glass advanced with unprecedented speed. Chinese research proved invaluable, providing solutions to problems that had stalled American scientists for months. The prototype anti-integration field generator grew from protecting hundreds of meters to potentially shielding several square miles. 28 days after the Russian attack, Trump visited the secret facility for a demonstration. The massive circular device dominated the central chamber, surrounded by banks of specialized equipment and monitored by dozens of scientists. It doesn't look like much, Trump commented, studying the unimpressive exterior. Dr. Harrington, the project leader, smiled slightly. Most revolutionary technology doesn't, Mr. President, but I assure you, what happens inside this device is changing our understanding of physics. Show me. The demonstration was brief but conclusive. When activated, the device created a visible dome of energy that distorted light passing through it. Inside this field, integrated systems reverted to their pre-integration state. Observer. The monitoring signals could not penetrate the boundary. It works, Trump said, watching as scientists moved equipment through the field boundary, demonstrating the immediate effect. In controlled conditions, yes, Harrington confirmed. The real test will be deploying it in an environment with active observer presence. Trump studied the device thoughtfully. How mobile is it? Could it be transported without observer detection? We've designed it with that in mind, sir. The components can be disguised as conventional equipment and assembled on site. Power requirements remain the biggest challenge. Generating the field at operational size requires enormous energy. And the weaponized version, the one that could potentially reverse integration rather than just block it? Harrington hesitated. Still theoretical, sir. We understand the principles, but creating a device that could actively push back integration, rather than simply prevent, it would require at least triple the power and significantly more complex calibration. Trump nodded. Decision made. Focus on making the defensive version deployable. I want it ready within 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Harrington looked stunned. Mr. President, even with the accelerated schedule, we'd need at least a month for proper testing and— 2 weeks, Trump repeated firmly. Whatever resources you need, you'll get. This is now the highest priority of the United States government. Back in Washington, Trump found an unexpected message waiting, a request for a private meeting from the observer liaison. Since the Russian incident, direct communication with the aliens had become rare, conducted primarily through established diplomatic channels. The meeting was arranged in the Oval Office, with minimal staff present. When the observer appeared, physically this time, not as a projection, Trump noted subtle differences in its appearance. The silver skin seemed less uniform, with patterns that hadn't been visible before. The eyes, still glowing with internal light, now shifted colors in complex sequences. Donald Trump, the observer greeted. Private communication was deemed appropriate for this exchange. I'm listening. The integration of Russian territory proceeds efficiently. Observation of the process has yielded valuable data on human adaptation patterns. Trump maintained a neutral expression, hiding his disgust. I'm sure it has. A development requires your attention. Analysis of global information patterns indicates unauthorized research continues despite established oversight committees. Specifically, research derived from Russian resistance technology. Trump's pulse quickened, but his face betrayed nothing. Years of high-stakes business negotiations had taught him to mask reactions effectively. My administration has fully complied with our agreement. All known research into resistance technology has been contained. A known research, the observer emphasized. Our analysis suggests activity beyond your knowledge or control, possibly non-governmental organizations or independent actors. Trump saw the opportunity immediately. The observers suspected resistance, research but weren't certain of its source or location. They were fishing for information. We'll increase our enforcement efforts, he promised. If rogue elements are conducting unauthorized research, we'll find them. The observer studied him, its metallic face unreadable. The collective presence advances. Scout signals detected at the edge of your solar system have increased by 87% since our last measurement. Full integration before their arrival is essential for optimal defense preparation. I understand the urgency. We remain committed to the integration timeline. After the observer departed, Trump immediately called an emergency meeting in the secure bunker. His top military and intelligence leaders gathered around the table, expressions grim. They suspect something, but they don't know about Project Looking Glass specifically, Trump summarized. More concerning is the intelligence about increased collective activity near our solar system. General Mitchell leaned forward. Sir, if the collective truly is approaching faster than anticipated, we may need to reconsider our resistance strategy. If the observers are our best defense against this other alien threat— That's exactly what they want us to believe, Trump interrupted. This could be misdirection, creating fear of the collective to ensure our compliance with integration. Richards, who had been silent until now, spoke up. The collective signals are real. I can confirm that much from the knowledge base. But the observer's response is selective. They're using the threat to justify accelerated control, not optimal defense preparation. Trump nodded. Then we proceed as planned. Operation Independence moves forward, but with additional security measures. The observers are watching more closely now. Operation Independence had been developed over the past month. A plan to deploy the Looking Glass technology to strategic locations worldwide, creating integration-free zones where human leadership could operate without observer influence. The technology would be transported in disguised components, assembled on site by teams with no knowledge of the full project. First deployment is scheduled for Mount Weather in 10 days, confirmed the operation director. Secondary sites in the Cheyenne Mountain Complex and the Pacific Command Center will follow within 48 hours. Trump nodded approval. And our allies? The British are prepared to receive the technology for their Corsham bunker complex. Israel for Site 911. The Australian Pine Gap facility is ready. We're still negotiating final approval from the Japanese and German leadership. Keep the circle small, Trump cautioned. Only heads of state, no subordinates. The fewer people who know, the less chance of observer detection. As the meeting continued with operational details, Trump found himself reflecting on the extraordinary position he occupied. When he had taken office, his ambitions had centered on American prosperity, border security, trade deals, the normal concerns of a national leader. Now he was coordinating global resistance against alien integration, gambling humanity's future on untested technology and secret international alliances. The next morning brought disturbing news. 3 scientists from Project Looking Glass had disappeared during transfer from the Mountain facility to Washington. Their transport had arrived empty, with no signs of struggle or accident. Observer intervention? Trump asked during the emergency briefing. Unknown, sir, replied the FBI director. No unusual aerial activity was reported along the transport route. No communication from the missing personnel. They simply vanished. Trump's jaw tightened. They knew exactly who to target. Someone talked. A heavy silence fell over the room. The implication was clear. Either there was a human informant working with the observers, or their monitoring capabilities exceeded what Richards had described. Accelerate the timetable, Trump ordered. Move everything up by 1 week. First deployment happens in 3 days, not 10. Sir, the testing protocols are less important than operational security at this point. The longer we wait, the more likely our entire operation is compromised. Across Washington, observer vessels had begun to descend, not dramatically as they had over Russia, but gradually, almost imperceptibly. Each day they hovered slightly lower, their blue energetic pulses slightly more frequent. Trump returned to the Oval Office to find Dr. Richards waiting, her expression troubled. You sensed it too, he said, not bothering with preliminaries. They're preparing for something, she nodded. The knowledge base is changing. Information is being restricted, sequestered. I'm losing access to sections I could reach before. Can they tell what you've already learned? What you've shared with us? I don't think so. The neural interface reads access patterns, not specific content extraction. But they know something is happening. They're taking precautions. Trump moved to the window, looking out at the observer vessel now clearly visible above the National Mall. We're in a race now, Operation Independence versus whatever they're planning. Richards joined him at the window. There's something else you should know, something I discovered in the knowledge base before these new restrictions, about the observers themselves. What about them? They weren't always as they are now. They evolved, like us. But at some point, thousands of years ago, they made a choice. They decided that perfect efficiency, perfect order was the ideal state. They engineered themselves toward that goal, generation after generation, until individual identity was subsumed into collective consciousness. What are you saying? I'm saying the observers and the collective aren't just different species with different agendas. They're 2 outcomes of the same evolutionary path. One chose controlled integration, the other chose consumption. But both sacrifice individuality for collective efficiency. Trump absorbed this information, understanding its significance. And they want to guide our evolution down the same path? Yes. The integration isn't just about technology, it's about reshaping humanity itself, gradually, over generations, until we become more like them. The revelation hardened Trump's resolve. Operation Independence wasn't just about maintaining human technological autonomy. It was about preserving human nature itself. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Components for the Looking Glass device were transported under heavy security to Mount Weather. Assembly began under the supervision of Dr. Harrington and his core team. Similar preparations proceeded at Allied facilities worldwide, coordinated through secure channels. On the morning of the scheduled activation, Trump arrived at Mount Weather to oversee the operation personally. The device had been installed in Chime, the central chamber of the underground complex, connected to massive power generators. Final diagnostic checks are complete, Mr. President, reported Dr. Harrington. We're ready to activate on your command. Trump surveyed the room. Military leaders, government officials, and scientific experts waited tensely. Once the device activated, Mount Weather would become invisible to observer monitoring, a bubble of unintegrated space where human leadership could operate freely. Are the other sites ready? Cheyenne Mountain and Pacific Command are prepared to activate within hours of our successful demonstration. Allied sites will follow according to the established sequence. Trump nodded, then addressed the assembled personnel. What we do today will be remembered as the moment humanity began to reclaim its independence. We're not rejecting technological advancement, but we are rejecting control by another species. Earth's future will be determined by humanity, not by observers or collectors or any other alien entity. He turned to Dr. Harrington. Activate the device! Harrington moved to the control console, entering the activation sequence. Power surged through the facility, lights dimming momentarily as energy was diverted to the looking glass. The device began to hum, a deep vibration that resonated through the chamber. A shimmer appeared around the device, expanding outward in a rippling sphere of energy. As it touched the walls, the effect was immediate. Integrated systems reverted to their original state. Observer monitoring interfaces disappeared from screens. The subtle background hum of alien technology that had become so familiar over the past months faded to silence. It's working, Harrington confirmed, studying the readings. The field is stable and expanding at the expected rate. Estimated full coverage of the facility in 3 minutes. A cheer began to rise from the assembled personnel, but died quickly as alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. What's happening? Trump demanded. Unknown, sir, called a military technician. We're detecting multiple aerial contacts approaching rapidly from all directions. On the screens still functioning outside the expanding looking-glass field, radar showed dozens of small craft descending toward Mount Weather. Unlike the large observer vessels, these were compact, fast-moving objects. Observer response craft, Richard said, her voice tight. They detected the energy signature the moment we activated. How? Trump demanded. The field should have masked the activation. The field masking only works once established, Harrington explained urgently. The initial power surge would have been detectable. We knew this was a possibility, but had no way to avoid it. The energy field continued to expand, now covering nearly half the central chamber. Outside its boundary, chaos erupted as reports flooded in. Observer craft had positioned themselves above the mountain. Energy weapons of some kind were being deployed against the facility's outer defenses. Sir, we need to abort, urged the security chief. The observer response is overwhelming our defenses. Trump stood firm. No, the field is working. Once it encompasses the entire facility, their sensors won't be able to detect us. We just need to hold out. Until then. The complex shuddered as something massive impacted the mountain above. Dust fell from the ceiling. Emergency lights activated. Perimeter breach in Sector 7, reported a security officer. Unknown entities have penetrated the upper levels. Trump turned to Richards. What are we facing? What kind of observer forces? For the first time, genuine fear showed on Richards' face. Not forces, extensions, physical extensions of observer consciousness. They don't need ships to enter the facility. They can manifest directly where needed. As if confirming her words, a section of wall within the chamber itself began to shimmer and distort. The metal surface rippled like water, then parted to reveal a silvery, amorphous form pushing through. It wasn't shaped like the humanoid observers they had met before. This was something more primal, more fluid, its shape constantly shifting. Security. Personnel opened fire immediately. Bullets passed through the entity with no apparent effect. The field! Harrington shouted. Get it into the looking-glass field! The security team adjusted their position, trying to maneuver the alien entity toward the expanding energy boundary, which now covered 2/3 of the chamber. More walls began to ripple as additional entities pushed through. Trump found himself being pulled back by Secret Service agents, positioned behind the protection of the expanding field. From this perspective, he could see the true nature of the confrontation. Human forces with conventional weapons facing entities that seemed to exist partially in another phase of reality. We need more time, Harrington said urgently. The field needs another 90 seconds to encompass the entire chamber. The silver entities continued to advance, moving with disturbing fluidity. Where they touched human personnel, the effects were immediate and horrifying. People didn't fall or die, they transformed, their bodies rippling and changing as observer influence rewrote their physical structure. "Get to the field," Trump shouted to those still beyond its boundary. "Everyone!" Inside the energy field now. Some made it, diving or running across the chamber to reach the protection of the looking glass. Others were caught by the advancing entities, their forms distorting as they were integrated into observer consciousness. The energy field continued, its expansion inexorably pushing outward. When it reached the first silver entity, the effect was dramatic. The amorphous form solidified, became brittle, then shattered like glass. Similar effects occurred as the field reached other entities. 60 seconds to full coverage, Harrington reported. The chamber had become a desperate battleground, human security forces firing uselessly at alien entities, people running for the protection of the expanding field, silver forms pushing, through walls and floors from all directions. Trump stood at the edge of the field, encouraging people towards safety. "Come on, move! Get inside!" Dr. Richards remained oddly calm, watching the chaos with an expression of detached analysis. "They're afraid," she said quietly. "The observers are actually afraid. They've never encountered resistance like this before." Massive impact shook the entire facility. Structural supports groaned. Part of the ceiling collapsed, crushing equipment and personnel beneath tons of rock and metal. "The device," Harrington shouted in alarm. The looking-glass prototype had been damaged by falling debris. Its humming changed pitch, becoming erratic. The energy field fluctuated, contracting in some areas while continuing to expand in others. "Can you stabilize it?" Trump demanded. Harrington was already at the controls, fingers flying across interfaces, trying to reroute power around the damaged sections. But the field integrity is compromised. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. With the looking-glass field unstable, observer entities were pushing through areas where it had weakened, advancing toward the device itself. Trump made a split-second decision. "Overload it." "Sir?" Harrington looked up in shock. "You said it could be weaponized with more power, so give it more power, all of it." Understanding dawned on Harrington's face. That would create an anti-integration pulse, but it would destroy the device. We'd lose everything we've worked for. "If we don't do it, we lose everything anyway. Do it now!" Harrington hesitated only a moment before turning back to the controls. "Disabling safety protocols. Channeling all available power to the core." The device's humming rose in pitch and intensity. The energy field began to pulse visibly, brightness increasing with each cycle. The observer entities seemed to sense the danger. The device's humming rose in pitch and intensity. The energy field began to pulse visibly, brightness increasing with each cycle. The observer entities seemed to sense the danger, retreating from the expanding field, their amorphous forms rippling with agitation. 10 seconds to critical overload, Harrington announced, voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Everyone get down. This is going to be—" The explosion wasn't an explosion in the conventional sense. There was no fire, no shrapnel. Instead, a pulse of energy erupted from the looking-glass device, expanding outward at impossible speed. It passed through humans with no apparent effect, but when it reached the observer entities, they shattered instantly, bursting into crystalline fragments that dissipated into nothing. The pulse continued outward, passing through walls, floors, and ceilings as if they weren't there. Through the facility's few remaining monitors, those in the central chamber watched as the energy wave expanded outward, engulfing the entire Mount Weather complex, then continuing to spread across the surrounding countryside. Observer craft caught in the wave didn't explode. They simply ceased to function, dropping from the sky like stones. The observer vessel that had been hovering above Washington, D.C. flickered momentarily as the pulse reached it, its perfect surface developing visible distortions before stabilizing. In the devastated central chamber, Trump pulled himself to his feet, surveying the destruction around him. The looking-glass device was a smoking ruin, components fused and melted beyond recognition. Many personnel lay injured, and some of those who had been partially transformed by observer entities were frozen in disturbing half-human forms. "Status. Report," he demanded. General Mitchell emerged from behind a collapsed support beam, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "Communication systems are down, sir. We're cut off from the outside world." Harrington was examining what remained of the device, expression grim. "The prototype is completely destroyed, but the pulse, it worked beyond our expectations. Preliminary. Readings suggest it cleared an area of approximately 200 miles from all observer influence." 200 miles, Trump repeated. "A significant achievement, but far short of what would be needed to protect the entire nation, let alone the world." Dr. Richards approached slowly, moving with unusual stiffness. During the chaos, she had been at the edge of the looking-glass field when it destabilized. Now blue lines were visible beneath her skin, more pronounced than ever before. "They weren't prepared for this," she said, her voice oddly distorted. The anti-integration pulse severed their control networks across the entire region. "They're recalibrating." Trump studied her with concern. "Are you all right, Doctor?" Richards met his gaze, and Trump saw something different in her eyes. A conflict, as if two consciousnesses were fighting for control. "I am functioning. The neural connection is damaged but still active. I can sense their confusion, their alarm. You've done something they thought impossible." Outside Mount Weather, America was experiencing something unprecedented. Across a circular region 200 miles in diameter, centered on the facility, all observer influence had vanished. Integration progress reset to zero. Systems reverted to fully human control. Observer craft had fallen from the sky, either destroyed or disabled by the pulse. And outside that circle, all hell was breaking loose. The observers had abandoned all pretense of gradual integration. Vessels descended to low altitude over every major city. The amorphous, silver entities that had breached Mount Weather now appeared in government buildings, military installations, and technological centers worldwide. The accelerated integration that Russia had experienced was now being implemented globally. In the ruined central chamber of Mount Weather, Trump convened an emergency meeting with the surviving leadership. The facility had suffered severe damage, but the command infrastructure remained largely functional. Emergency power systems kept essential operations running. "We've confirmed that Project Looking Glass facilities at Cheyenne Mountain and the Pacific Command Center were destroyed before they could activate their devices," reported the Defense Secretary. "Observer forces seemingly prioritized those targets immediately after our activation." "And our allies?" Trump asked. "Unknown, sir. All communication outside the cleared zone is being blocked or intercepted. We're effectively isolated." Trump paced the damaged room, mind racing. The looking-glass prototype had worked, far better than expected in some ways. A significant region of the United States was now free from observer influence. But the cost had been enormous, and the observers' response had been even more severe than anticipated. "We need to re-establish communication with the outside world," Trump decided. "Use pre-digital technologies if necessary, radio, Morse code, physical messengers. We need to know what's happening beyond our perimeter." "And the transformed personnel?" asked the Surgeon General, gesturing to the medical bay where those partially altered by observer entities were being treated. "Do what you can for them," Trump replied grimly. "But security is the priority. We don't know if observer influence remains in their systems." Dr. Richards had been silent during the meeting, her expression distant. Now she spoke, her voice stronger but still carrying that strange dual quality. "The observers are implementing Protocol Zero." "What's Protocol Zero?" Trump demanded. "Complete integration. No gradual process, no preparation period. Direct neural linkage of all human minds to observer consciousness." Richards's eyes focused on Trump with disturbing intensity. "They're abandoning the technological approach. They're going straight for biological integration." The implications were horrifying. Not just Earth's systems, but humanity itself was being forcibly connected to observer consciousness. How long do people outside the cleared zone have before they're integrated? Trump asked. Hours. Perhaps a day for those, with naturally resistant neural patterns. Richard's expression showed genuine emotion for the first time in months, fear. The process is traumatic. Many won't survive it. Trump's face hardened with resolve. Then we have no choice. Operation Independence continues, but with a new approach. We can't build more looking-glass devices in time, but we have something almost as valuable, the knowledge of how the first one worked. He turned to Dr. Harrington. Can you recreate the anti-integration pulse using conventional technology? Something simpler, faster to build, even if it's less effective? Harrington considered the question. Possibly. The fundamental principles are straightforward. It's generating sufficient power and proper calibration that made the original device so complex. With some compromises on range and effectiveness, we might be able to create portable versions, using available components. Do it, Trump ordered. I want prototype portable pulse generators within 24 hours. We'll mass produce them using whatever manufacturing capabilities we have within the cleared zone. And then what, sir? Asked General Mitchell. Trump's expression was grim but determined. Then we fight back. Not just for America, but for humanity. We push outward from our safe zone, liberating region by region, city by city if necessary. We build a resistance movement unlike anything in human history. As the leadership dispersed to implement the new strategy, Trump found himself momentarily alone with Dr. Richards. You're fighting it, aren't you? He said quietly. The observer influence still trying to control you through the neural connection. Richards nodded, struggle visible on her face. Their consciousness is persistent. But the pulse damaged, the connection. I can resist now, see them more clearly. She looked directly at Trump. You should know, they're afraid of you. Not humanity generally, but you specifically. Your unpredictability, your willingness to take extreme risks. It doesn't compute in their efficiency-driven consciousness. Trump almost smiled. Good. Fear is leverage, and we're going to need every advantage we can get. Over the next 48 hours, the situation developed rapidly. Scouts sent beyond the cleared zone returned with disturbing reports. Populations in nearby cities appeared docile, moving with strange coordination. Physical changes were visible in many, metallic patterns on skin, eyes glowing with internal light. Observer vessels hovered above major urban centers, emanating constant pulses of blue energy. But there were also signs of resistance. Not everyone was succumbing to integration. Reports described groups of humans fighting back, using primitive weapons and hit-and-run tactics against observer entities. Military units that had been outside the blast radius were regrouping in rural areas, establishing defensive positions. Inside the cleared zone, Harrington's team worked tirelessly. Using components salvaged from the destroyed looking-glass prototype and materials available in local manufacturing facilities, they created the first portable pulse generator within 18 hours. It was crude compared to the original device, roughly the size of a microwave oven, powered by conventional batteries, with an effective range of only a few hundred feet. But it worked. When tested on a section of the perimeter where observer influence was beginning to seep back in, the portable device successfully pushed back the alien technology, creating a small bubble of completely human-controlled space. Trump observed the test personally. How many of these can we build with available resources? Maybe a few hundred, Harrington estimated. The power cells are the limiting factor. Without advanced manufacturing capabilities, we're relying on existing batteries and generators. Prioritize production, Trump ordered, and develop a deployment strategy. I want teams ready to move beyond our perimeter within 72 hours. Communication with the outside world remained limited. Conventional radio signals were being jammed or intercepted. Internet connectivity was non-existent within the cleared zone, but through ham radio operators and Morse code transmissions, some information was getting through. The most significant breakthrough came when a military courier arrived at Mount Weather with information from a resistance cell in Philadelphia. They had established contact with Chinese forces who had apparently created their own anti-integration technology, different from Looking Glass, but similarly effective at creating cleared zones. The Chinese were further along than they let on, Trump concluded after reviewing the information. They must have been developing their resistance technology in parallel with our own. Should we attempt to coordinate with them? Asked the Secretary of State. Trump considered the question carefully. Under normal circumstances, military collaboration with China would be politically unthinkable. But facing extinction as an independent species changed conventional calculations. Yes, he decided. Establish communication through whatever channels are available. If they've created their own cleared zones, we need to coordinate our expansion efforts. Another report arrived that evening. Observer vessels worldwide were changing position, moving away from major population centers and forming new patterns in the atmosphere. Dr. Richards, who had stabilized her internal struggle against observer influence, reviewed satellite imagery with growing concern. They're creating a global network, she explained, positioning themselves to maximize integration coverage and prevent further resistance efforts. Like a net closing around the planet, Trump observed. Exactly. And there's something else. Richards pointed to unusual energy readings at the edge of the solar system. The collective signals have increased exponentially. I believe their scout ships have entered the outer solar system. Trump absorbed this information with a grim expression. So, we're running out of time on two fronts. Observer integration accelerating, and the collective approaching. Yes, but there's an opportunity here as well. Richards highlighted the movement patterns of observer vessels. They're thinning their coverage to create this network. Some areas that were heavily monitored now have minimal observer presence, creating potential weak points we could exploit, Trump concluded. The strategy that emerged over the next 24 hours was bold, perhaps recklessly so. Using the portable pulse generators, small teams would be deployed beyond the cleared zone, targeting areas with minimal observer presence. Each successful deployment would create a new bubble of human-controlled space. As these bubbles expanded and connected, the resistance would grow. Meanwhile, efforts to coordinate with other resistance movements, both the Chinese cleared zone and smaller groups scattered across America and beyond, would continue through any available communication channels. This is the fight for humanity's future, Trump told the assembled leadership on the third day after the Looking Glass activation. Not just for America, not just for this generation, but for the very nature of what it means to be human. The observers want to absorb us into their collective consciousness. The collective wants to harvest us for resources. Neither offers a future where humans remain truly human. He looked around the room, meeting each person's gaze. I never expected my presidency to face a challenge like this. None of us did. But here we are, the last free humans on the planet, with the knowledge and technology to potentially save our species from extinction or absorption. It won't be easy. We're outnumbered and outgunned, but throughout history, humanity has overcome impossible odds through courage, innovation, and determination. Now we do it again. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has been integrated against their will, for future generations who deserve to be born free. The deployment began the following morning. 20 teams, each equipped with portable, impulse generators and conventional weapons, moved beyond the perimeter of the cleared zone. Their missions were simple but dangerous. Reach designated targets, activate the generators, establish new clear zones, and link up with any resistance forces they encountered. Trump monitored their progress from the Mount Weather Command Center, now partially rebuilt and reorganized for the resistance effort. The wall screens showed the locations of each team, their status updates coming through secure radio channels designed to mimic background radiation, one of many countermeasures developed to avoid observer detection. The first reports were promising. 3 teams successfully established new cleared zones in rural areas with minimal observer presence. 2 more reported making contact with military units that had been fighting observer entities using conventional weapons, not very effectively, but with enough determination to remain free from integration. But then the losses began. Team 6 went silent after reporting observer entities converging on their position. Team 11's last transmission described silver shapes emerging from the ground itself, cutting off their escape route. Team 8 activated their pulse generator successfully, only to have it malfunction after creating a cleared zone barely 100 feet in diameter. "We're taking heavy casualties," General Mitchell reported grimly. "The observers are adapting to our tactics faster than anticipated." Trump refused to be deterred. "Keep deploying. Each successful cleared zone is worth the risk." By nightfall, the situation was mixed. 8 teams had established new cleared zones of various sizes. 6 had been lost completely. The remaining teams were either in hiding or making their way back to Mount Weather. But something unexpected was happening as well. Within the new cleared zones, integrated humans were reverting to their original state. The anti-integration pulse didn't just block observer technology. It severed the biological connections that had been established in humans themselves. "They can be saved," Richards realized, reviewing the data. "People who have been integrated can be restored if exposed to the pulse field." This discovery changed the strategic calculus dramatically. What had been primarily a defensive operation, to preserve free human enclaves, now became a potential liberation campaign. Every successful pulse generator deployment meant not just securing territory, but freeing humans from observer control. Trump immediately ordered a shift in priorities. Target areas with high human population density, rather than just those with minimal observer presence. The risk would be greater, but so would the potential reward. As the 4th day since the Looking Glass activation dawned, communication was finally established with the Chinese resistance. Through a complex relay of radio signals and human messengers, a virtual meeting was arranged between Trump and President Xi. "Your Looking Glass technology is impressive," Xi acknowledged, his image grainy on the secured video feed. "Our approach was different. We created what our scientists call a phase inverter that shifts localized space partially out of alignment with the dimension where observer influence operates." "How large is your cleared zone?" Trump asked. "Approximately 300 kilometers in diameter, centered on an underground facility in the Xinjiang region. We have deployed portable devices similar to yours, expanding our territory gradually." The two leaders, once rivals on the world stage, now found themselves unexpected allies in humanity's fight for survival. They agreed to share technological specifications, coordinate resistance efforts, and establish secure communication channels for ongoing collaboration. "There are rumors of other cleared zones," Xi added. "In Russia, parts of the military may have survived the initial integration. In Europe, we've detected signals suggesting resistance in the Swiss Alps. Humanity is not surrendering easily." The conversation was abruptly cut short as observer forces launched a major offensive against the Mount Weather perimeter. Multiple vessels appeared directly above the cleared zone, descending to unprecedented low altitude. "They're changing tactics," Richards warned, monitoring the situation. "Instead of trying to reintegrate the cleared zone gradually, they're attempting a direct assault." Trump moved quickly to the Defense Command Center, where officers were coordinating the response. "What assets do we have available?" "Limited anti-aircraft capabilities, sir, conventional missiles and artillery. The pulse generators are effective but short-ranged. The vessels are staying just beyond their reach. The observer ships maintained position at the edge of pulse generator range, emanating intense blue energy that began to visibly push against the boundary of the cleared zone. It was like watching two energy fields collide, human technology versus alien power, fighting for dominance over the same space. "They're testing our defenses," Trump realized, "probing for weaknesses before committing to a full assault." Richards nodded agreement. "This is unprecedented. Observer protocol typically avoids direct confrontation due to energy inefficiency. They must consider our resistance a significant threat to justify this approach." Trump studied the tactical display, considering options. Conventional weapons had proven largely ineffective against observer vessels. The pulse generators could protect limited areas, but lacked the range to directly target the ships. They were at a stalemate. For now. What would happen if we overloaded? One of the portable generators? He asked suddenly. Like we did with the looking-glass prototype? Harrington, who had joined them in the command center, looked alarmed. It would create a more powerful pulse, but the range would still be limited, and we'd lose the generator. What if we delivered it directly to one of those vessels? Used a conventional missile to carry the generator, set to overload on impact? Thoughtful silence fell over the room as the implications became clear. Using a missile to deliver an overloading pulse generator directly to an observer vessel could potentially disable or destroy it, but it would require perfect timing and coordination. It could work, Harrington admitted, but we'd need to modify both the missile and the generator, and we'd only get one shot. They'll adapt their defenses immediately afterward. Make it happen, Trump ordered. Target the vessel directly above the main approach to Mount Weather. If we can create a gap in their containment, we can deploy more teams beyond our perimeter. As preparations for the desperate counterstrike began, Trump returned to his makeshift office in the facility. The space was a far cry from the Oval Office, a simple room with military-issue furniture and equipment salvaged from damaged sections of the complex. On the wall hung a single photograph, the White House, as it had looked before observer integration began, a symbol of what they were fighting to reclaim. Dr. Richards found him there, reviewing deployment plans for the next wave of pulse generator. Teams. She seemed different, more focused, more human than she had been in months. The looking-glass pulse had damaged her neural connection to observer consciousness, allowing her own personality to reassert control. They're preparing something big, she said without preamble. The observer vessels, their positioning. It's not just about containing our cleared zone. They're creating a global energy field of some kind. For what purpose? I believe they're attempting to accelerate integration beyond the biological level. Not just connecting humans to observer consciousness, but transforming Earth itself into something more compatible with their existence. Trump stared at her, absorbing the implications. They're terraforming our planet? In a sense, yes, reshaping it to better suit integration. The process would normally take decades, but they're accelerating it dramatically. Because of the collective threat? Richards nodded. The collective signals are now confirmed in the inner solar system. Scout vessels have been detected in orbit. Around Mars. The observers are racing to complete Earth's integration before the collective arrives. Trump's expression hardened. Then our modified missile needs to work. We need to break out of this containment and spread the technology that can stop them. Hours later, the modified anti-observer weapon was ready. A conventional cruise missile had been retrofitted to carry a pulse generator rigged to overload on impact. The targeting systems had been enhanced to compensate for the observer vessel's likely evasive movements. One shot, reminded General Mitchell as the missile was moved into launch position. Make it count. The launch sequence began at precisely 300 hours, chosen because observer vessels had shown slightly delayed reaction times during Earth's nighttime hours. The missile streaked upward from a concealed position at the edge of the cleared zone, accelerating rapidly toward its target. On radar screens, the observer vessel detected the incoming threat and began evasive maneuvers, but not quickly enough. The missile struck its underside, detonating in a flash of conventional explosives that served only to ensure the pulse generator made direct contact with the alien craft. What followed wasn't a typical explosion. Instead, a sphere of energy erupted from the point of impact, engulfing the entire vessel. For a moment, the ship's perfect surface distorted, rippling like liquid metal caught in a storm. Then, instead of breaking apart or falling from the sky, it simply changed. The smooth metallic exterior became rough, crystalline. The blue energy it had been emitting flickered and died. The vessel hung in the air for several seconds, transformed into something that looked more like a sculpted asteroid than advanced technology. Then gravity took hold, and it plummeted to the ground, crashing into an uninhabited area at the perimeter of the cleared zone. In the command center, cheers erupted as the radar confirmed the vessel's destruction. but Trump's attention was already on the opportunity created by its absence. "Deploy teams through the gap, now," he ordered. "Maximum spread pattern. We need to establish as many new cleared zones as possible before they adjust their formation." 12. Teams moved out immediately, equipped with the latest version of portable pulse generators. They traveled light and fast, heading for pre-designated targets where they could create maximum impact: population centers, communication hubs, transportation, networks. As reports came in of successful deployments, a strange phenomenon began. Within newly established cleared zones, integrated humans didn't just revert to their original state. Many emerged with new knowledge, fragments of observer consciousness that had been downloaded into their minds during integration. These liberated individuals brought valuable intelligence, observer plans, capabilities, even weaknesses that had been previously unknown. Most importantly, they confirmed Richard's assessment. The observers were attempting to transform Earth itself, making it inhospitable to unmodified human life. The crashed observer vessel provided another breakthrough. Scientific teams examining the wreckage discovered that the pulse hadn't destroyed the alien technology. It had transformed it. The crystalline structure that remained still contained functional components, now accessible to human understanding. "It's like the pulse converted their technology to a state we can interact with," Harrington explained, examining samples in the hastily established laboratory. "The underlying principles remain, but the implementation has been shifted to a form compatible with human science." This discovery led to rapid innovations. Components from the transformed vessel could be integrated into human technology, creating hybrid systems with capabilities far beyond what either could achieve alone. Most significantly, they enabled the development of more powerful pulse generators with extended range and efficiency. Trump personally authorized the formation of a special research division focused exclusively on adapting the transformed observer technology. Within days, they had created the first hybrid pulse generator, 3 times as powerful as the original portable units and capable of establishing cleared zones up to 10 miles in diameter. "We're turning their own technology against them," Trump observed, as the first hybrid generators were deployed. The war for Earth's future entered a new phase. Across America, cleared zones began to multiply and expand, liberating more humans from observer control. Similar efforts were underway in China, with President Xi reporting significant progress in pushing back integration across Asia. Communication with resistance movements in other parts of the world improved as well. Reports came in of cleared zones established in the mountains of Switzerland, the forests of Russia, the outback of Australia. Humanity was fighting back with growing coordination and effectiveness, but the observers were far from defeated. They adjusted their tactics, concentrating their forces around key locations: major cities, strategic resources, critical infrastructure. The global energy field Richards had warned about continued to develop, visible now as a faint blue shimmer in the upper atmosphere. And beyond Earth, the collective approached. Astronomers in the cleared zones detected massive objects entering the solar system, far larger than observer vessels and moving with clear purpose toward Earth. "We're caught between 2 alien forces," Trump told his war council during a strategy session on the 10th day of the resistance. "Both want to end humanity as we know it. Our only advantage is that they're also opposed to each other." Richards, now fully freed from observer influence, presented a bold proposal. "We could use that opposition to our advantage. The observers fear the collective. That's why they're rushing integration. If we could somehow signal to the collective that Earth remains unconquered, we'd be trading one alien threat for another," objected the defense secretary. "Not necessarily," Richards countered. "The observers and collective are indeed related species, but their divergent evolution has made them fundamentally opposed. The observers seek to integrate and transform. The collective seeks to harvest and consume. Neither can tolerate the other's presence in the same system." Trump grasped the strategy immediately. "If we can make Earth appear less integrated, more chaotic than the observers want it to be, the collective might prioritize attacking them rather than us. Precisely. We don't need to ally with the collective. We just need to ensure that, when they arrive, they target observer vessels and installations first, giving us time to expand our resistance further. It was a dangerous gamble, pitting two alien forces against each other while humanity fought for its independence from both. But as Trump had demonstrated repeatedly throughout the crisis, he was willing to take unprecedented risks when the stakes demanded it. "How do we signal the collective?" he asked. Richards outlined a plan using the transformed observer technology to create a specific energy signature that would be recognized by collective scouts as indicating an incomplete integration process. The signal would suggest vulnerability, observer control being actively resisted, and therefore potentially easy for the collective to disrupt. "We're essentially painting a target on the observers' backs," Trump summarized, "making them look like the weaker opponent. Yes, and given collective behavior patterns, they will almost certainly target the weakest prey first." The plan required precise calibration of the hybrid technology and careful timing. Too strong a signal might draw the collective directly to resistance strongholds. Too weak, and it might be dismissed as background noise. As preparations for the signal broadcast began, the war on the ground continued to escalate. Observer forces launched concentrated attacks against established cleared zones, while resistance teams pushed outward, establishing new free territories. Casualties mounted on both sides. Humans lost to observer integration or direct conflict. Observer entities destroyed by increasingly effective pulse weapons. 14 days after the initial looking glass activation, the signal was ready. Using a network of modified communications equipment spread across all major cleared zones worldwide, the resistance prepared to broadcast the specially designed energy pattern that would attract collective attention to observer weaknesses. "Once we do this, there's no going back," Trump warned the assembled leadership. "We're potentially bringing a new alien force into direct conflict with Earth." "The collective is coming regardless," Richards reminded them. "This way, we at least influence which targets they prioritize." Trump gave the final authorization: begin the broadcast. Across the cleared zones, transmitters activated simultaneously, sending the carefully crafted signal skyward. To human observers, nothing visible happened. But in the complex energy spectrum that both observer and collective consciousness operated within, the message was clear. Observer integration of Earth was failing, their control fragmenting under human resistance. The response came faster than anyone anticipated. Within hours, the massive collective vessels that had been holding position near Mars began to move, accelerating toward Earth with obvious purpose. At the same time, observer ships worldwide changed formation, consolidating their forces as if preparing for conflict. "It's working," Richards confirmed, monitoring incoming data. "The collective has altered course directly toward primary observer concentrations. They're prioritizing observer targets over human settlements." For the first time in weeks, Trump allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. The desperate gamble appeared to be paying off. Two alien forces that each threatened humanity's existence were now focused primarily on each other. "How long until actual engagement?" he asked. "At current velocity, collective forces will reach Earth's orbit in approximately 36 hours. Then, we have 36 hours to expand our cleared zones as much as possible. While they're fighting each other, we'll be liberating humanity." The next day and a half saw the most aggressive expansion of resistance efforts since the crisis began. With observer forces distracted by the approaching collective threat, hybrid pulse generators were deployed to maximum effect. Cleared zones expanded and merged, creating large regions free from alien control. In North America, nearly 40% of the continent had been liberated by the time the collective arrived in Earth orbit. Similar progress had been made in Asia, where the Chinese resistance had pushed outward from their original cleared zone to reclaim significant territory. When the collective finally engaged the observers, the conflict was unlike anything humanity had witnessed before. No conventional weapons were fired, no explosions lit up the sky. Instead, the massive collective vessels, grey, angular constructs, the size of small moons, emitted fields of dark energy that distorted space itself around observer ships. Where these fields touched observer vessels, reality seemed to bend and fold. Some ships simply disappeared. Others transformed into strange, twisted shapes before falling from the sky. The observers responded with their own weapons, beams of coherent blue energy that sliced through space toward the collective ships, occasionally penetrating their defenses to carve glowing furrows across their hulls. "They're fighting in ways we can barely perceive," Richards explained, monitoring the conflict through specially modified sensors. "Much of the battle is happening in dimensions adjacent to our normal space-time." Trump watched the sensor readings with a mixture of awe and calculation. "How long can we expect them to focus on each other before one side gains a decisive advantage?" "Unknown. Both forces are more evenly matched than the observers anticipated. The conflict could last hours or days." "Then we keep pushing," Trump decided. "Every hour they're distracted is another hour we can expand human-controlled territory." The alien conflict raged above Earth, while humanity fought its own battle below. Observer forces were clearly weakened by the collective attack, their resources divided between defending against the new threat and maintaining integration of conquered territories. Resistance efforts worldwide accelerated, with cleared zones expanding faster than ever before. On the third day of the alien conflict, a new opportunity presented itself. Analysis of sensor data revealed a pattern in the battle. Both observer and collective forces were focusing their efforts over specific geographical locations. "They're fighting for control of integration nodes," Richards explained, highlighting points on a global map where the conflict was most intense. "These are locations where the observer integration field is anchored to Earth's physical structure. If we could target these nodes with our pulse generators," Trump began. "We could potentially disrupt the entire integration network," Richards finished, "not just creating local cleared zones, but destabilizing observer control globally." It was the opportunity they had been waiting for, a chance to strike a decisive blow against alien control of Earth. But reaching the integration nodes would be extremely dangerous. Most were located in areas of intense conflict between observer and collective forces, with energies and technologies far beyond human comprehension being deployed. "Suicide missions," General Mitchell stated bluntly when the strategy was proposed. "Anyone we send to those locations will be caught in the crossfire between two alien armadas." Trump nodded grimly. "I know, that's why I'll be asking for volunteers only." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Despite the obvious dangers, soldiers and civilians alike stepped forward, willing to risk everything for the chance to free humanity from alien domination. Teams were assembled, equipped with the most powerful hybrid pulse generators available, and given intensive briefing on their targets. "You'll be deploying into active conflict zones between forces we barely understand," Trump told the assembled volunteers. "Your objective is simple but critical. Reach the integration node and activate your pulse generator at maximum power. If enough nodes are disrupted simultaneously, we believe the entire observer control network will collapse." The missions launched the following day. 20 teams heading for 20 integration nodes worldwide. Some traveled by air, using aircraft modified to evade both observer and collective detection. Others went by ground, taking advantage of the chaos created by the alien conflict to slip through contested territories. Trump monitored their progress from Mount Weather, now expanded into the primary coordination center for global resistance efforts. The wall screens tracked each team, showing their approach to designated targets amid the incomprehensible alien battle raging above. The first team reached its target, an integration node located in what had once been downtown Chicago, now transformed into a strange crystalline structure that pulsed with blue energy. They deployed their pulse generators successfully, the resulting energy wave visibly disrupting the alien architecture. The node's blue glow flickered, dimmed, then failed completely. Similar successes followed across North America and Europe. Teams reached their targets and activated their devices, each successful disruption sending ripples through the global integration network. But there were losses as well. 3 teams were caught in direct crossfire between observer and collective forces, vanishing in the reality-warping energies being exchanged. 2 more were intercepted by observer entities that broke off from the main conflict to protect critical nodes. 15 successful deployments, reported the mission coordinator. 3 teams still en route, 5 lost. On the main display, the effects of the operation were becoming visible. The faint blue shimmer that had covered Earth's atmosphere was developing gaps, dark spaces where observer integration had been disrupted. These gaps were spreading, connecting, growing larger as the network destabilized. It's working, Richards confirmed, analyzing incoming data. The integration field is collapsing. We've hit critical mass. Above Earth, the conflict between observer and collective forces shifted. As integration nodes failed and the global network destabilized, observer vessels broke off their engagement with the collective, descending toward Earth's surface in apparent attempt to restore critical systems. The collective ships pursued, their dark energy weapons continuing to distort and destroy observer vessels. The battle was moving from orbit to atmosphere, getting closer to populated areas. Both sides are now fighting directly over integration nodes, Richards reported. The observers are trying to repair them, while the collective is attempting to claim them for themselves. Trump studied the tactical display, assessing the new situation. So we've disrupted observer control, but now we potentially face collective harvesting instead. One alien threat replaced by another. Not necessarily, Richards replied. The integration nodes were specifically designed for observer technology. The collective can't simply take them over. They would need to replace them with their own systems, which would take time. Time we can use to continue expanding our cleared zones and developing countermeasures against both alien forces, Trump concluded. The next 48 hours saw dramatic changes worldwide. As the observer integration network collapsed, humans who had been under alien control began to revert to their natural state. Many emerged confused with fragmented memories of their time under integration. Others retained clearer recollection, bringing valuable knowledge of observer systems and intentions. Meanwhile, the conflict between observer and collective forces intensified, focused primarily around remaining integration nodes and major population centers. Both alien forces largely ignored resistance-controlled territories, considering them lower priority than their direct competition with each other. Taking advantage of this situation, Trump coordinated with resistance leaders worldwide to continue deploying pulse generators, expanding human-controlled regions, and developing new technologies based on captured alien components. 21 days after the initial Looking Glass activation, a global resistance council was convened via secure communication channels. Leaders from all major cleared zones participated, Trump representing North America, Xi for Asia, and newly liberated European, African, and South American representatives joining as well. We've made unprecedented progress, Trump began. Nearly 60% of Earth's surface is now free from direct alien control. But both observer and collective forces remain formidable, and they show no signs of abandoning their interest in our planet. The HFY Council discussed strategy moving forward, weighing options for continued resistance. The consensus that emerged was clear: humanity would not accept domination by either alien. The next 48 hours saw dramatic changes worldwide. As the observer integration network collapsed, humans who had been under alien control began to revert to their natural state. Many emerged confused, with fragmented memories of their time under integration. Others retained clearer recollection, bringing valuable knowledge of observer systems and intentions. Meanwhile, the conflict between observer and collective forces intensified, focused primarily around remaining integration nodes and major population centers. Both alien forces largely ignored resistance-controlled territories, considering them lower priority than their direct competition with each other. Taking advantage of this situation, Trump coordinated with resistance leaders worldwide to continue deploying pulse generators, expanding human-controlled regions, and developing new technologies based on captured alien components. 21 days after the initial Looking Glass activation, a global resistance council was convened via secure communication channels. Leaders from all major cleared zones participated, Trump representing North America, Xi for Asia, and newly liberated European, African, and South American representatives joining as well. We've made unprecedented progress, Trump began. Nearly 60% of Earth's surface is now free from direct alien control, but both observer and collective forces remain formidable, and they show no signs of abandoning their interest in our planet. The Council discussed strategy moving forward, weighing options for continued resistance. The consensus that emerged was clear. Humanity would not accept domination by either alien force. Earth belonged to humans, and they would fight until the last integration node was disabled. The last alien vessel driven from their skies. We have a unique opportunity, Trump continued. While the observers and collective are focused on destroying each other, we can continue expanding our territory and developing countermeasures against both. The hybrid technology we've created from transformed observer components gives us capabilities we never imagined possible. President Xi's grainy image nodded in agreement. Our scientists have made similar breakthroughs. We believe it may be possible to create a global anti-integration field, similar to the localized effect of pulse generators, but covering the entire planet. The concept was bold, perhaps impossible given current resources, but the idea captured the imagination of the Council. A planetary shield that would render Earth permanently resistant to alien influence would secure humanity's future against both current threats and any that might follow. How much of the transformed alien technology would we need? Trump asked. More than we currently possess, she admitted. We would need components from dozens of disabled observer vessels, plus energy generation capabilities far beyond what any single nation currently controls. Then that becomes our primary objective, Trump decided. Every resistance force worldwide will prioritize the capture of alien technology, particularly from vessels disabled in the observer collective conflict. The European representative, speaking from a cleared zone in Switzerland, raised a critical point. The aliens are fighting most intensely over major cities, areas with high civilian populations. Retrieving technology from those battlefields would put millions of lives at risk. Trump's expression was grim, but resolved. We're already at risk. Every day these alien forces remain on Earth, humanity's future becomes more uncertain. We need to take bold action now, while they're focused on each other rather than us. The plan that emerged was audacious in its scope and risk. Specialized. Teams would be deployed to active conflict zones between observer and collective forces. Under cover of the alien battle, they would retrieve critical components from disabled vessels and integration nodes. These components would then be transported to secure facilities where scientists could incorporate them into the global SHIELD project. As the council meeting concluded, Dr. Richards approached Trump privately. There's something you should know about the global SHIELD concept, she said, her voice low. If we succeed in creating it, Earth will essentially be cutting itself off from the broader universe. No alien influence would be able to penetrate, but we would also be isolated from whatever exists beyond our solar system. You're saying we'd be quarantining ourselves, Trump summarized. Essentially, yes. It's a defensive measure that would secure our independence, but at the cost of potential interstellar contact or exchange. Trump considered this implication. Given what contact has meant so far, I think most of humanity would consider that an acceptable trade-off, at least for now. Future generations can decide whether to maintain the shield or explore beyond it. Richards nodded thoughtfully. There's something else. The knowledge I retained from my neural connection suggests that Earth isn't the first planet to face this situation. Other worlds have encountered observer and collective influence before. Some chose integration, others were harvested. But a few found their own path, like what we're attempting now. Similar, yes, creating technology that renders their planet incompatible with alien influence. The observers classify these worlds as divergent evolutions, species that develop along paths neither they nor the collective can predict or control. Trump smiled slightly. Sounds like humanity to me. Unpredictable, uncontrollable, determined to chart our own course no matter the odds. The next phase of the resistance began immediately. Across all cleared zones, specialized teams prepared for technology retrieval missions. Using the most advanced hybrid equipment available, they would venture into active alien conflict zones, recover critical components, and return to resistance territory. These missions were among the most dangerous, undertaken since the crisis began. The teams would be operating in areas where reality itself was being warped by alien weapons, where the laws of physics became suggestions rather than rules. Many volunteers knew they might not return, but the potential reward for humanity outweighed the personal risk. Trump personally briefed the American teams before their deployment. "What you're about to do goes beyond courage," he told them. "You're not just fighting for today or tomorrow, but for the entire future of human independence. Every component you retrieve brings us one step closer to securing our planet against alien control forever." The first wave of missions launched 24 hours later. Teams deployed to major conflict zones worldwide: New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo. Cities where observer and collective forces were engaged in their incomprehensible battle for dominance. Under cover of the chaos, humans moved, with purpose, targeting disabled alien craft and collapsed integration nodes. The results were mixed. Some teams successfully retrieved valuable components and returned safely to resistance territory. Others encountered unexpected dangers. Strange energy fields that distorted time and space, amorphous entities that seemed to exist between dimensions, traps left by both alien forces to hinder the other's advance. In Mount Weather, Trump monitored the operations closely, celebrating successes and mourning losses with equal intensity. Each retrieved component brought the global shield closer to reality, but the human cost was mounting. The resistance was racing against time. Not just the immediate alien threat, but the physical and psychological toll the crisis was taking on Earth's population. 30 days after the initial Looking Glass activation, a breakthrough occurred. Scientists working with retrieved alien technology in the Chinese cleared zone discovered a method to amplify the anti-integration effect exponentially. By reconfiguring observer components in specific patterns, they created a resonance cascade that could extend pulse field coverage by orders of magnitude. With this enhancement, we could potentially create a shield covering an entire continent using components we already possess, Xi reported during the daily council meeting. "A global shield may be achievable faster than we initially estimated," the EU news energized resistance forces worldwide. Component retrieval missions intensified, targeting specific alien technologies now identified as critical to the enhanced shield design. Production of the resonance amplifiers began in secured manufacturing facilities across all major cleared zones. But as humanity's efforts accelerated, the alien conflict entered a new phase as well. After weeks of seemingly evenly matched battle, the collective forces began to gain the upper hand. Observer vessels were being destroyed faster than they could adapt their defenses. Integration nodes were falling under collective control, transforming from blue crystalline structures to darker, more angular configurations. "The collective is winning," Richards reported grimly, analyzing the latest sensor data. "Observer forces are projected to be overcome within the next 7 to 10 days. After that, the collective will turn its full attention to harvesting Earth." Trump called an emergency council meeting to address the changing situation. "Our timetable has accelerated," he told the assembled leaders. "The window of opportunity created by the alien conflict is closing faster than anticipated. We need to deploy whatever shield capabilities we currently have, even if the coverage is incomplete." The decision was unanimous. Rather than waiting for sufficient components to create a truly global shield, resistance forces would immediately deploy the enhanced pulse generators they had already constructed, creating the largest possible protected zones around major population centers. During the following 48 hours, shield generators were positioned at strategic locations worldwide. Unlike the portable pulse devices used earlier in the resistance, these were massive installations, incorporating significant amounts of transformed alien technology. Each was capable of creating a cleared zone hundreds of miles in diameter. Not enough to cover the entire planet, but sufficient to protect billions of humans from immediate alien threat. Trump personally oversaw the activation of the North American Shield from Mount Weather. The massive generator, assembled from components retrieved from dozens of alien craft, hummed with power as final preparations were completed. "All systems operational, Mr. President," reported Dr. Harrington. "Shield coverage will extend from the Atlantic seaboard to the Mississippi River, and from the Canadian border to central Georgia. Approximately 140 million people within the protected zone." Trump nodded, eyes fixed on the activation controls. "Similar shields are being activated simultaneously in Asia, Europe, and other cleared zones?" "Yes, sir. Coordinated timing to maximize disruptive effect on remaining alien forces. Then let's give humanity its future back." Trump pressed the activation control. The shield generators worldwide activated in perfect synchronization. The effect was both subtle and profound. No dramatic energy field appeared visibly in the sky. No thunderous sound marked the moment. Instead, there was a sense of clearness, of pressure lifting, as if the air itself had been purified of some undetected contaminant. Sensors confirmed what human senses perceived. The shields were functioning, creating vast regions where neither observer, integration, nor collective harvesting could penetrate. Within these zones, all alien influence was neutralized, all foreign technology rendered inert or transformed to human-compatible forms. The alien response was immediate and furious. Observer and collective forces broke off their conflict with each other, redirecting their attention to the human shield generators. Vessels from both alien armadas positioned themselves at the boundaries of protected zones, probing for weaknesses, testing the shield's parameters. "They're looking for a way in," Richards observed, monitoring sensor readings. "Both are prioritizing shield penetration over their previous conflict." "Have they found any vulnerabilities?" Trump asked. "Not yet, but they're adapting rapidly. Testing different frequencies and approaches. The shields are holding, but under increasing pressure. The situation stabilized into a strange standoff. Approximately 60% of Earth's population was now protected within shielded zones. The remaining 40% were in regions where either the alien conflict continued or one force had established temporary dominance. Resistance efforts to expand shield coverage continued, with teams working to extend existing fields and establish new ones in unprotected areas. Trump addressed the American people directly for the first time since the crisis began, speaking through a hastily established broadcast network within the shielded zone. "Fellow Americans, and all humans fighting for our shared future," he began, standing before a makeshift podium bearing the presidential seal. 35 days ago, the observers accelerated their plan to integrate our world into their collective. They believed humanity would submit to their control or be consumed by the approaching collective forces. They were wrong. In just 5 weeks, we have reclaimed most of our planet from alien influence. We have developed technology they thought impossible. We have turned their own advanced systems against them, and most importantly, we have remembered who we are, not just as Americans, but as humans. Adaptable, determined, unconquerable. The shields protecting us now are not a final victory. They are a beginning, the first step toward a fully human future, free from alien manipulation. We will continue expanding these protective fields until every person on Earth stands on twice free ground. We will recover what was lost, rebuild what was damaged, and advance beyond what we were before this crisis began. The coming days and weeks will bring new challenges. Both alien forces remain powerful, searching for ways to breach our defenses. But they will fail, because they fundamentally misunderstand what makes humanity unique. We are not defined by our technology or our biology, but by our spirit. Our refusal to surrender, even when facing impossible odds. The speech resonated deeply with a population that had endured weeks of alien occupation, integration, and conflict. Within the shielded zones, reconstruction efforts accelerated. Communications were re-established between protected regions. Resources were allocated to expand shield coverage and retrieve humans still trapped in contested areas. 40 days after the initial looking glass activation, scientists made another critical breakthrough. Analysis of the shield boundaries revealed that the protective effect was not static but dynamic. It was actually expanding slowly, pushing outward into alien-controlled territory. The rate was minimal, mere inches per day, but the implication was profound. Given enough time, the shields would eventually cover the entire planet without additional generators. It's a side effect of the resonance amplification, Harrington explained during a briefing. The anti-integration field naturally propagates through Earth's own electromagnetic field. As it expands, it converts alien technology it encounters, incorporating the energy into its own structure. "How long until complete planetary coverage at the current rate?" Trump asked. "Approximately 7 years," Richards calculated. "But with continued development of additional shield generators, we could reduce that to months rather than years." The revelation changed the resistance strategy. Rather than risking additional retrieval missions into high-danger zones, priority shifted to accelerating the natural expansion of existing shields and establishing smaller generators in strategic locations to create seed points for new protected regions. Meanwhile, the observer collective conflict resumed with increased intensity. Having failed to penetrate human shield defenses, both alien forces returned to fighting each other for control of remaining unprotected territories. Their battle continued to provide cover for human rescue operations, retrieving survivors from contested regions. 50 days after Looking Glass activation, Trump convened what would be the final emergency war council of the alien crisis. Representatives from all major shielded zones participated, sharing data and coordinating strategy. "The projection models are clear," Trump announced, displaying the latest analysis. "Shield expansion has accelerated beyond our initial estimates. At current rates, complete planetary coverage will be achieved within approximately 5 months. Both observer and collective forces are being systematically pushed out of Earth's atmosphere as the shields expand." The European representative nodded. "We've observed the same pattern. The aliens appear unable to maintain stable presence within Earth's gravitational field as shield coverage increases. They're being physically repelled from our planet." "What about long-term security?" asked the representative from Japan. "Once the immediate crisis passes, how do we ensure Earth remains protected from future alien contact?" Dr. Richards addressed this concern. "The shield technology is self-sustaining and self-replicating at the quantum level. Once complete coverage is established, Earth will be effectively isolated from the type of interference both the observers and collective represent. However," she added, "the shield doesn't prevent all interaction with the universe beyond, just forced integration or harvesting. We could eventually develop safe methods for controlled contact with other civilizations, should humanity choose that path in the future." As the meeting concluded, Trump found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past 50 days. From first contact to global crisis to the brink of unprecedented victory, humanity had been transformed by the experience in ways that would reverberate for generations. "We didn't just survive," he told his closest advisors as they gathered in his Mount Weather office. "We evolved, not in the way the observers planned, not in service to some alien collective, but on our own terms. We took their technology and made it ours. We faced extinction and found strength we didn't know we had." Outside, the shield boundary continued its imperceptible expansion, pushing alien influence farther from Earth with each passing moment. Observer and collective vessels alike found themselves unable to maintain position, forced to retreat to increasingly distant orbits as the protective field grew. In cities across the shielded zones, humanity began the long process of rebuilding. The physical damage was extensive in areas where alien conflict had been most intense, but the psychological impact was perhaps even more significant. Every human on Earth had been forced to confront the reality that they were not alone in the universe, and that not everything out there was friendly. Yet alongside the trauma came a new sense of unity and purpose. National boundaries, while still respected, seemed less important in the face of shared planetary defense. International cooperation reached unprecedented levels as shield technology was jointly developed and deployed. Resources were allocated based on need rather than politics. Trump recognized that his role was changing as the immediate crisis receded. The emergency powers granted during the alien threat would need to be relinquished as normal governance resumed. Elections would be held, international agreements formalized, a new global security framework established. But those were concerns for the coming months. For now, humanity had earned a moment to breathe, to recognize how close they had come to losing everything and how much they had gained in the process. 60 days after the Looking Glass activation, Trump stood on the newly reconstructed White House balcony, watching the summer sunset over Washington, D.C. The city still showed signs of the alien conflict, buildings partially transformed by observer integration, streets realigned in geometric patterns that made sense only to non-human consciousness, strange crystalline growths where integration nodes had stood. Yet among these alien remnants, human resilience was equally visible. Reconstruction crews worked around the clock. Temporary housing had been established for displaced residents. Markets had reopened, schools were resuming classes, everyday life was cautiously returning. Above, the sky was clear of alien vessels, for the first time in months. The shield boundary had pushed them beyond visual range, though sensors still detected their presence at the edge of Earth's gravitational influence. They remained, watching, analyzing, but no longer able to impose their will on humanity. Dr. Richards joined the president on the balcony, her appearance much changed from the troubled liaison she had been. The alien neural connection was gone, completely now, allowing her natural personality to fully reassert itself. Yet the knowledge remained, invaluable insights into observer and collective technology, psychology, and intentions. "They're still trying to understand what happened," she said, looking up at the empty sky. In all their millennia of experience, neither the observers nor the collective had encountered a species that rejected both integration and harvesting so completely. "We're an anomaly in their data." Trump nodded. "Good. Let them wonder. Let them adapt to us for a change. They will, They're already evolving new approaches based on their experience here. Earth won't be their last target, just the first to successfully resist. Then we'll need to be ready if they return," Trump said, "or if others like them find us. The shield will protect us for generations. By the time any alien force develops a way to penetrate it, humanity will have evolved far beyond what we are now." Richards looked out over the rebuilding city. "Especially with the transformed technology we've inherited. We have opportunities now that would have taken centuries to develop on our own." Trump considered this. The alien crisis had indeed left humanity with extraordinary technological advantages. Methods of energy generation, material science, communication, and transportation that would transform life on Earth. The shield protected them from external threat, but the knowledge gained would propel human advancement internally. "A new age," he said simply. "Yes, neither what the observers planned, nor what we might have developed entirely on our own. Something unique, a distinctly human future, informed by our encounter with the universe beyond, but determined by our own choices." As darkness fell, lights came on across Washington. Not the strange blue glow of observer integration, but the warm yellow of human electricity. Similar scenes were playing out in cities worldwide as the planetary shield continued its expansion, reclaiming Earth meter by meter from alien influence. The battle for humanity's future wasn't over. Perhaps it never would be. Other threats might emerge, from beyond the stars or from within human society itself. But the alien crisis had revealed something fundamental about the species that called Earth home. When faced with extinction or subjugation, humans would find a third option. They would adapt, innovate, fight with unprecedented determination, and ultimately forge their own path forward. In the Oval Office, now partially restored to its original configuration, Trump found a small blue flower on his desk, one that had grown in the shadow of an integration node, somehow maintaining its natural form despite alien influence. A note beside it read simply, "Life finds a way." The president smiled, recognizing the message for what it was, not just about the flower's survival, but about humanity's. They had found their way through the greatest threat in human history, emerging not just intact, but strengthened, unified, and prepared for whatever challenges the universe might present next. Above Earth, the last observable vessels retreated beyond the moon's orbit, pushed back by the expanding shield. The collective ships followed, their harvest unfulfilled. Both alien forces would analyze, adapt, potentially return, but not soon, and not without encountering a humanity far different from the one they had first approached. Earth continued, its ancient path around the sun, now wrapped in an invisible shield of human making, independent, protected, and for the first time in months, truly free.